Namaste. I pray for you. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, translated by James Haughton Woods. With intent to state the third form, he asks, now? He gives the answer in the words from which these coarse elements are made. Of any one of these coarse elements, one part, a single mutation, is an atom. The generic form is the limitation and extent are the like. The sounds and other perceptible things are the particulars. The atom has its essence in these two parts. A collection corresponds to such instances of things as are in part a generic form, and in part a particular, wherein these parts cannot separately exist, and yet have no intervals between them. And just as the atom is a subtle, sukshma form, so all the fine elements, tanmatra, are a subtle form. He brings this to a close in the words, this is. Now the fourth form of the elements, the aspects with dispositions to discernment, and to activity, and to inertia, and conforming to the nature of their effects, means those whose disposition it is to be inseparably connected with, anugantum, that is, to conform to anupat, the nature of their effects. Hence, they are described by the term inherence. Anavya. Now, the fifth form of these elements is purposiveness. He elaborates the word purposiveness by saying experience. An objector asks, even if it be granted that the aspects have a purpose, how can you still say that their effects are purposive? In reply to this, he says, the aspects, products of the elements, are such things as cows or water jars. Having thus described the object of the constraint, he describes the constraint itself and its results in the words, upon these, the evolving causes of the coarse elements are the elements themselves. As a result of this atomization, man, and the other perfections come about. There is perfection of body, and there is no obstruction by the properties of these elements. As to these 8 perfections, atomization occurs in case the yogin becomes atomic. Levitation occurs in case the yogin becomes light. Three, magnification, Mahiman, occurs in case the yogin becomes magnified. 4, extension, Prabte, occurs in case the yogin touches the moon with a mere finger's tip. 5, efficiency and the non-obstruction of a desire occurs in the case the yogin dives into the earth, underground, and emerges again as if in water. 6, mastery. Vachitva occurs in case the yogin masters elements and products of elements and is not mastered by others. 7, sovereignty occurs in case the yogin is sovereign over the production, absorption, and arrangement of these elements and products. 8, the capacity of determining things according to desire. Yatra kamav asa is the capacity to will actual facts so that the elements, which are the evolving causes, remain as he wills. And although having power, he does not cause a reversal of things. Okay. Kamavasayitva. Okay. Although having power, he does not cause reversal of things, Why not? Because at the will of another, the Ishvara, the Ishvara is the ultimate Ishvara, God, master, aware, I forget what all it means. Just say Lord, who determines things according to desire, and who from the beginning is perfected. The elements have been so willed. These are the 8 powers. Perfection of body is described later, and its external aspect are not obstructed. Earth, with its limitation and extent, its essential attribute, does not restrict the action of the body and the organs of the yogin, for he penetrates even the rock. The water, liquid as it is, wets him not. The fire, hot as it is, burns him not. The wind, motor as it is, budges him not. And even in the air, whose essence is that nothing is covered by it, his body is covered. Nay more, not even the Sutras may behold him. When the elements follow the commands of his will, what perfection is attained by the yogin? In reply, he says, 45. As a result of this atomization and the other come about, there is perfection of the body, and there is no obstruction by the properties of these. From the mastery resulting from constraint upon the coarse elements, 4 perfections follow. As he says, as to these, atomization, that is, although great, becomes small. Levitation, that is, although great, he becomes light and stays in the air like the tuft of a reed. Magnification, that is, although small, he becomes in dimension, an elephant or a mountain or a town. Extension, that is, all things become close at hand for the yogin. For instance, even while standing on the earth, he touches the moon with the tip of his finger. I can't help but remember the E.T. movie that came out the year I was born. He describes the perfection resulting from the subjugation by constraint of the essential attribute. In the words, efficacy, the non-obstruction of desire. His own form is not obstructed by the limitations in extent and other essential attributes of the elements. He dives underground and emerges as if in water. He now gives the perfection resulting from the subjugation by constraint of a subtle object by saying, 6. Mastery. The elements are earth and the other coarse elements. The products of the elements are such things as cows and water jars. He becomes master of them, independent with regard to them, and not mastered by them. Since there is a mastery of the atoms of earth and the other coarse elements, and of the subtle elements, which are the causes of these elements and products, there follows a mastery of the effects of these. Therefore those particular elements or products of elements, when put into a certain state, remain in that state. He now gives the perfection which results from subjugation by constraint upon inherence, anvaya, as its object by saying, sovereignty. Having subjugated the radical cause of these elements and products of elements, he becomes sovereign, both over their growth or production, and over their decay or destruction, and over their arrangement or proper arrangement. He now describes the perfection which is the result of constraint upon purposiveness by saying, fulfillment of whatever is desired is the volition which becomes effective. Whenever a yogin who has been successful with regard to the purposiveness of the aspects wishes anything to serve a particular purpose, that thing serves him for that purpose. Making others eat poison, he wills that it have the effect of nectar and makes them live. An objector says, this may be so, but why does he not make an interchange of things also, just as he makes a reversal of powers, so that he might make the moon into the sun, or make Kuhu into Sinivali? The reply is, and although having the power, he does not. For surely those whose desires are fulfilled do not venture to transgress the order of the exalted highest Ishvara. Remember, Ich from Ish, ruler, Guna Ish, Ganesh, ruler of the modes, Lord of hosts, Yahweh Tzbaut. But the powers, Chakti, of things are not limited in their nature, insofar as they differ in species and places, and times and intensity. So it is proper that these powers should follow the commands of this yogin. These are the 8 powers of Ishvarya with regard to the words, and there is no obstruction by the properties of these elements. By the very mentioning that the atomization and the other perfections come about, it is clear that there is no obstruction by the properties of these elements, but this is mentioned again to make known the fruitions resulting from the constraints upon all the objects mentioned in this sutra. And the same holds good with reference to perfections of body. The rest is easy. 46. Beauty and grace and power and the compactedness of the thunderbolt. This is perfection of the body. The perfect body is handsome and alluring and unexcelled in power and compact as the thunderbolt. He describes the perfection of the body. 46. Beauty and grace and power and the compactness of the thunderbolt. Perfection of the body. A compactness as of the thunderbolt, of such a kind that the arrangement of the parts is firm and solid. 46. 47. As a result of constraint upon the process of knowing and the essential attribute and the feeling of personality and the inherence and the purposiveness, there follows the subjugation of the organs. The object to be known is the sounds and other perceptible objects, whose essence is both the generic form and the particular. The process of knowing is a fluctuation of the organs with reference to these objects, and this process has not the character, akara, of being a process of knowing their generic form only. How, if the object as a particular were not seen by the organ, could it be determined by the central organ? But the essential attribute is a collection, inherent in the different parts, which cannot exist separately. A collection of the generic form, for example, the audibility, and of the particular, for example, the sounds, and so forth. A collection which belongs to the sattva of the thinking substance, whose essence is brightness. The organ is itself such a substance. The third form of these organs is the personality substance, with the feeling of personality, asmita, as its distinguishing characteristic. Organs are particulars of this generic form. The fourth form is the aspects of guna, whose essence is a determination, vyav asaya, and whose disposition is to brightness and activity and to inertia, of which aspects the organs together with the personality substance are a mutation. The fifth form is inseparably connected with the aspects and the purposiveness of the self, constraint is performed upon one after the other of these 5 forms of the organs. As a result of the subjugation of the 5 forms of accomplishing the subjugation in each several one of them, there comes about for the yogin the subjugation of the organs. After the yogin has subjugated the elements, his means for subjugating the organs is described. 47. As a result of constraint upon the process of knowing and the essential attribute and the feeling of personality and the inherence and the purposiveness, the subjugation of the organs. As a result of constraint upon these, the process of knowing and the essential attribute and the feeling of personality and the inherence and the purposiveness, the process of knowing is an act of perception, grahiti, and this process, for its description, requires the object to be known. So he describes the object to be known by saying, whose essence is both the generic form and the particular. Having described the object to be known, he describes the process of knowing in the words with reference to these. The fluctuation is about the same as an external sense process. Alokana, an act of mutating into the form of an object, in reply to those who say that the fluctuation of an organ has as its object only the generic form, he says, and this has not. It is a process of knowing because something is known. And the process of knowing has not, for its object, the generic form only. For the central organ, which depends upon the external organs, acts upon the external, and not upon the generic form. Otherwise, we should have to admit that there are, for example, no blind or dumb persons. So then, if the organ were not to have a particular as its object, then that particular would not be externally sensed by that organ. How then could particulars be determined by the central organ? Therefore, the perception of the organs has for its object both the generic form and the particular. This, then, is the process of knowing, which is the first form of the organs. He describes the second form in the words, but the essential attribute. For the personality substance, out of a portion of its own sattva, generated the organs. Hence, that generic form of the organs, which belongs to all of them, and those particular features which are limited to some such object as color. Both of these 2 kinds also have brightness as their essence. By saying the third form of these organs, he refers to the personality substance as the cause of the organs. So wherever there are organs, this personality substance must be. Thus, since it is common to all the organs, it is the generic form of the organs. This is the meaning. He speaks of the fourth form because the aspects, guna, have a double form, one whose essence is a determination, and another whose essence is to be the object of the determination. Of these 2 forms, with reference to the fact that its essence is an object of determination, and that it is an object of knowledge, the 5 fine elements, and the elements, and the products of the elements, form themselves, but with reference to the fact that its essence is a determination, and that it has the form of a process of knowing, the organs together with the personality substance form themselves. This is the meaning. The rest is easy. Well, if you've gotten this far, watch the rest of the videos. The comment, I guess, does get easier to understand. I don't know. I'm not exactly new to all this stuff. 48. As a result of this, there follows speed great as that of the central organ, action of the instruments of knowledge disjunct from the body, and the subjugation of the primary cause. Speed of the mind means that the body acquires motion comparable to that of the mind. Action of the instruments of knowledge disjunct from the body is the acquisition by the discarnate organs of the fluctuation required for the place and time and object desired. Subjugation of the primary cause is the mastery over all evolving causes and evolved effects. These three perfections are called honey-faced, madhu pratika, and they are acquired as the result of the subjugation in 5 forms of instruments of perception. He describes the perfections which result from the subjugation in 5 kinds of the organs. 48. As a result of this speed of the central organ, action of the instruments of disjunction, and the subjugation of the primary cause. The fact that the organs are instruments of perception, even for the discarnate, is described as being the action of the instruments of perception disjunct from the body. The place is Kashmir, or some other place. The time is past, or some other time. The object is subtle, or other. As a result of the subjugation of the organ and the inherence, there follows mastery of all evolving causes and evolved effects, a subjugation of the primary cause. These perfections are called honey-faced by those persons who are experienced in the yoga system. I sure like my honey quartz over there. That's something different. Although I can refer to this as symbolism for that now, can I? For the persons who are expert in the yoga system. An objector says this may be true. By subjugation of the organs together with their objects may be mastered. But what is gained by subjugation of the primary cause and of the other causes of these organs? In reply to this, he says, and they, the instruments of perception are the organs, the 5 forms are the 5 processes of knowing, Book 347. The result follows from the subjugation of these. What he means to say is this: these perfections are not a result of a subjugation of organs in general, but of the 5 forms of the processes of knowing, and included in these 5 is the primary cause and the rest. 49. He who has only the full discernment into the difference between the sattva and the self is one who has the authority over all states of existence, and is one who knows all. He who is grounded in only the full discernment into the difference between the sattva and the self, and who is in the higher consciousness of being master in the higher clearness, and who has the sattva of his thinking substance cleansed from the defilement of rajas and tamas, is one who has authority over all the states of existence, the aspects, guna, which are the essence of all things, which have both the determinations and the objects of determination as their essence, present themselves as being the essence of the object for sight, and its totality to their owner, the soul, Gaset Rajna. This is the meaning. Being one who knows all refers to the intuitive knowledge produced by discernment and rising instantaneously into consciousness of the aspects guna, which are the essence of all, whether they be, Book 3:14, quiescent or uprisen or indeterminable. This is the meaning. It is the perfection that is termed, Book 1:36, the undistressed, by attaining to which the yogin who knows all, who hindrances and bondages have dwindled, takes his recreation as having mastery. So, attaining to omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence doesn't mean you actually become a god. It means that you're in line with this knowledge of God, that you definitely are having more of a presence, more of a power, more of a sense of knowledge, but it's you're becoming one in purpose with what you worship. The same constraints which, whether mediately or immediately, lead to powers is in the form of knowledge and of activity, are for the sake of discernment into the difference between the sattva and the self by way of the confidence produced by grasping the perfections in turn and binding them together. The supernormal powers subsidiary to this discernment are shown in the Sutra 49. He who has only full discernment into the difference between the sattva and the self is one who has authority over all states of existence and is one who knows all. Well, we can know ourselves, but God knows ourselves even better, right? There is clearness insofar as the defilement by Rajas and Tamas has been washed away. As a result of this, there is the higher consciousness of being master. It was inevitable that the sattva, or the mind stuff, should be overwhelmed by the Rajas and Tamas. But when the latter subside, it is this sattva that is to be mastered by the yogin and its master. When it is mastered, the yogin, who is grounded in only the full discernment of the difference between the sattva and the self, is one who has authority over all states of existence. This same he explains by the words essence of all things. Both the determination and the object of determination mean both the inert, jada, and the bright kind. In this way, the power of action has been described. He describes the power of knowledge in the words, one who knows all, with the intent to create passionlessness. With regard even to this twofold perfection, he gives the technical name current among yogins in the words that is termed the undistressed. Scientology says non-abrogated. There's various ways of referring to the thing. Of course, I wouldn't say that Scientology is a good source of terminology or concepts, but it certainly grasps things from elsewhere, right? One whose karmas, both hindrances, 2.3, and bonds, 1.24, have dwindled away. He is of that kind, 50. As a result of passionlessness, even with regard to these perfections, there follows after the dwindling of the seeds of the defects, isolation. When, after the dwindling of the hindrances and of karma, intuitive knowledge comes to him thus. This presented idea of discrimination is an external aspect of the sattva, and sattva is to be reckoned with those things that are to be escaped. The self, moreover, is immutable, undefiled, chuddha, by the aspects, and other than the sattva. When he is thus unaffected by the aspects, those seeds of the hindrances which, like burned seeds of rice, are incapable of generation, go together with the central organ to their rest, and when these, being resolved into the primary cause, the self does not again have the experience of the three pains, tapa. Then these aspects, in that they are manifested in the central organ as being karma and hindrances and fruitions, have fulfilled their purpose, and invert the process of generation. Then there is the absolute absence of correlation of the self with the aspects, which is isolation. Then the self is not else than the energy of intellect, chitta, grounded in itself. Chitte ram, chitte ram, chitte ram, chitte ram. With the intent to show what constraint upon the discernment, the discriminative discernment, is the purpose of the self, whereas all other constraints result in that pseudo-purpose of the self. He describes the result of the discriminative discernment by means of the gain in the higher passionlessness. Remember the discernment of devotional service, the discernment of serving God, but how in this aspect, it's not that just we pray and read scriptures all day. Definitely there's this journey of self-discovery. The Luciferian can worship, can't they? 50. As a result of passionlessness, even with regard to these, there follows after the dwindling of the seeds of the defects, isolation. When, after the dwindling of hindrances and karmas, the yogin has intuitive knowledge, thus of what sort is this knowledge? In reply, he says, this presented idea of discrimination is an external aspect of the sattva. The rest has been explained in various places and is accordingly easily. Is it easy? Anyways, 51. In case of invitations from those in high places, these should arouse no attachment, our pride, our undesired consequences reoccur. Now there are 4 kinds of yogins. Pratama Kalpika, Madhubhumika, Prajna Jyotis, Atik Rantabhavaniya. Of these 4, the first is the observant of practice, Abhyasan, for who light is just beginning. Luciferianism is bringing out one's light. The second has the truth bearing insight, distinguishing the difference between, well, that's not quite, but definitely self-realization is important. Book 1, 48. The third is he who has subjugated the elements and the organs, and who has provided means for keeping all that has been cultivated, such as super-reflective states, and is yet to be cultivated, such as the undistressed perfection. Book 1, 36. And who has the means of attainment, and so forth, for what has been done and what is yet to be done. The self-mastery and the self-actualization. But the fourth, who has passed beyond that which may be cultivated, has as its sole aim the resolving pratisarga of the mind stuff into its primary cause. His is the sevenfold, Book 2, 27, insight and advancing in stages of the highest concentration, the purity of the sattva, and that Brahman among these 4 who has directly experienced the second, honeyed Madhumati stage, is observed by those